Before digital, okay, companies would run TV campaigns. They would run billboards. They would run radio, which is not trackable. And yet they would fill their stores on the weekend. And they used measurement back then to grow their brands. I'm talking about companies like BMW, Pepsi, Coke, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So there are techniques out there that enable you to measure that unmeasurable thing, the stuff that you cannot directly connect. And this goes back to how marketing actually works. How marketing works is you're not buying clicks. You are buying attention. You're buying eyeballs. And the job of that attention is to build awareness. And awareness takes a while to build up. When that awareness builds up enough, eventually some of those people will walk into your store. And if your store happens to be your website, that translates into clicks.
What up, Entrepreneur Masters? Welcome to the Persistent Entrepreneur Podcast, where grit meets inspiration. My name's David Hill, two-time author, business coach, world-class sales trainer, top real estate broker, Iron Man, 23 years sober. My mantra is I exist to persist. Each week, I'll bring you powerful stories from relentless entrepreneurs, visionary business owners, and trailblazing leaders who have mastered perseverance like me. Get ready to uncover actionable strategies, mindset shifts, and the inspiration you need to conquer your goals. Let's persist one day and one story at a time. Enjoy. Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of the Persistent Entrepreneur Podcast. And today we're with Mr. Jeff Greenfield. Jeff, how's it going today, man?
I'm doing great, David. Excited to be here today. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. Excited to talk to a magician. I think you said former magician, but then you said once you're a magician, you're always a magician, right? Is that how it works?
It never leaves the blood. It started when I was like 5 on a trip to Disney, fascinated that things could multiply in my hand, and it helped me pay my way through college, and it's still there. In fact, I always have a deck of cards nearby. It's part of my life. And my best trick ever is that I was working one night in 1986 in Newport Beach, California, and was working in a restaurant and went up to this table and did a trick. And that woman I asked out, and we've been together now for almost 40 years. So that was my best trick ever. I can't top that one. Thank you.
That's good to hear, man. My best trick happened at, ironically, Newport Beach, Rhode Island.
Oh,
and I met my wife, and it was not as, I guess it was cool. We connected with each other, and I was on the phone. She was kind of walking, doing a thing. I wasn't paying attention, and we bumped into each other, and there we were. So that's Newport Beach. So we both have that in common, though.
All right.
Awesome. Hey, appreciate you being with us today. Thank you very much. Just so people know a little bit about you, Jeff owns a company called Provalytics. Well, tell us about Provalytics.
Yeah, it all comes down to we're in the marketing business. And the purpose of Provalytics is all based upon this saying of this famous marketer by the name of John Wanamaker, who once said, half the money I spend in advertising is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. And that problem was bad before digital. And now it's even worse because there's hundreds of thousands of places to put your marketing dollars, which means it's even more difficult to figure out what's working, what's not working. And so we use a combination of statistics, math, and AI with machine learning to figure out what's working, what's not working, and to tell you where to spend your next marketing dollar. Before this company, I built another company starting in 2008 that focused on this same issue called C3 metrics and scaled that up to be one of the first, what we would call multi-touch attribution measurement platforms, primarily for enterprise. So we dealt with folks like US Bank and JP Morgan, some of the largest spenders in the world and in the US. I exited there in the summer of 2019, thinking after 12 years, I was done with that business. I was exhausted. Then COVID came, and COVID brought with it all of these privacy changes for the internet because all of us were spending more time online. And my prior company was based on collecting lots of data, which we could do back then. But now I could see forward that we were moving to a new world where you couldn't get all that data anymore. And that meant that measurement was going to be more difficult and it was going to create a lot of gaps. And so a couple of years ago, I theorized that we could use some old school techniques mirrored with AI and machine learning to fill those gaps. And that's what we've been able to do. And that's led to the growth of Provalytics.
That's great, man. It's interesting because when I saw your bio, yeah, it talked about you being a magician and also about storytelling. But it's interesting because you're talking about AI and statistics and math. So help us understand how you're connecting statistics, math, AI to storytelling and being a magician. That's
Well,
going to help our audience.
that's a great question, David, because when you think about statistics and math, it doesn't create a very sexy picture. And it usually creates a situation where people think of spreadsheets and get me the hell out of here type of thing. And that's a real issue. But understand it, you have to kind of walk into the world of today's marketer. And you have to think about marketing is sexy. And a lot of people think about marketing, they think about Mad Men, like you're going to be the person that comes up with this big idea that's going to save the company. You're going to say, this old campaign is out. We need to do something. And you come up with funky ideas and it changes the world for everybody, which is amazing. That's what everyone wants. And that's why people go into marketing. But what happens is when they get into it, marketing is not sexy. It's actually a world of a ton of math and lots of spreadsheets. And the problem is that for today's marketer, you have to take this math and be able to tell stories with it. And you have to be able to tell what's happening and how we're going to change the shape of this brand and how we're going to get into the mindset of consumers. That's very difficult to do. Most folks don't have the tools to do that. Now, where we weave in some magic for most people is a great kind of like making you think outside of the box. When you think about magic, and everyone wants to try to figure things out. And usually what ends up happening is that the way to figure things out is you have to think, you can't think in a linear fashion. You can't go A to B to C because magicians don't do that. They go from A right to C, but they don't tell you, and it forces you to think differently. And so with marketing, statistics, and numbers, you have to think differently. But the problem is that these marketers are not good with math. And so what we do is what our platform does is it does all the math for them so that they don't have to worry about the stuff that they're not good at. The icky stuff that most people would run away from, we do that all in the background. So they have the numbers in front of them, and then we work with them to tell the story that they need to tell. Meaning, like, for example, hey, we ran a connected TV campaign. So connected television today is one of the hottest things. It's digitized TV ads. And you may not even think about it. You may turn on the game and there's a TV spot thinking that everyone in the country is seeing that ad at the same time. But the reality is that ad may be just targeted for you and your household alone. So how do you connect that to be able to demonstrate and tell a story how we ran a test in a certain area? And that area, just in Cincinnati, we ran those ads in Cincinnati and we saw an increase in sales of 25% just in Cincinnati. It's the only city in the country that we saw that. Now that's a compelling story. And the reason as a marketer, go ahead.
Let me just pause you for a minute though. When you talk about math, what exactly are you measuring? What are you looking at? Let's give some examples of what that means for our listeners.
Yeah, what that means is that I spent money on TV. I spent money on connected TV. I was in Google. I was in Meta. I sent direct mail. I've got billboards all around the country. And my sales this weekend were $10 million. I had a great weekend. Normally my sales are 8 million, but this weekend I had 10 million. How do I have that same weekend next weekend? What combination of things did I do with the ads that I purchased propel my sales from 8 million to 10 million? And then how do I tell a story about that to finance so that I can get more money as a marketer and go from 10 million to 15 million? How do I do that? So what we do is that we measure that connection between advertising and sales to show marketers what they're doing that's good and what they're doing that's not good so they can stop doing it, and then help them tell a story to be able to go and get more budget, more money so they can grow their sales.
So let's talk about how are you measuring clicks? What's the metric here?
Great.
You said Provalytics is the name of your company. It's proof,
Yeah.
you said, correct?
That's right.
It means
That's
proof.
right.
So yeah, so I'm the perfect customer for you, frankly, because I've tried running, I spent, I don't know about hundreds of thousands, but certainly tens of thousands trying to run ads and just get nothing. And the people just say, oh, you need to spend more money. That's like the common, what you hear from an ad agency.
See, here's the interesting thing, David, because you mentioned clicks, okay? And so let's talk about the world of the clicks, and let's give an example. Let's say I have a flower shop, okay? And my flower shop name is jeffsflowers.com, okay? And I'm known in my community. I'm running ads on Meta, and on Meta, I'm advertising for Mother's Day. And I've got this great video that's on there, and there's ads on there, and there's ads on Instagram. And so let me give you a scenario. Somebody's scrolling through their Facebook feed and they see my ad, but they just glance over it for a second. And then a couple hours later, they're on Instagram and they stop to watch the video, but they don't click on anything. And they put a little mental note in their head and they say, okay, jeffsflowers.com. That's pretty cool. Let me check that out. But I'm going to go there later. And then the next day they remember, oh my God, Mother's Day, flowers, and they go to Google and they type in Jeff's Flowers and they see my ad, my brand search ad under my name, and they click on it and they buy. Okay. So in my numbers in Google Analytics 4 for that sale, who gets credit for that sale? Google, because I only see one click. Because remember, on Instagram and on Meta, Facebook, we did nothing.
Right.
Multiply that by the entire month. And at the end of the month, I'm going to look at my numbers and I'm going to say, hell, Google's killing it. Meta sucks. And I cut my Meta spend down to nothing. And then what happens next month? My sales go down. And that's a typical story. So what that shows us is that clicks are not what we want to measure. Clicks are the after effect of marketing. So here's how marketing actually works. The way marketing works.
So is there a way, so like you said, somebody sees it, because I see a lot of stuff in my scrolling, but I don't click on it. And sometimes it might even stop for half a second. Is there a way they can track, can they track that too? Or no?
We used to be able to before COVID, but we can't do that now due to privacy. But guess what? Before digital, okay, companies would run TV campaigns. They would run billboards. They would run radio, which is not trackable. And yet they would fill their stores on the weekend. And they used measurement back then to grow their brands. I'm talking about companies like BMW, Pepsi, Coke, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So there are techniques out there that enable you to measure that unmeasurable thing, the stuff that you cannot directly connect. And this goes back to how marketing actually works. How marketing works is you're not buying clicks. You are buying attention. You're buying eyeballs. And the job of that attention is to build awareness. And awareness takes a while to build up. When that awareness builds up enough, eventually some of those people will walk into your store. And if your store happens to be your website, that translates into clicks. So you can see that there's a lot of stuff that happens before clicks. So in marketing speak, those eyeballs that you buy, we call impressions. Those are ad impressions. And so what Provalytics does is it measures those ad impressions. And that's what we did before digital. So essentially what we've done at Provalytics is we've taken the techniques that the KFCs, Taco Bells, and the BMWs of the world used for 30, 40 years, and we updated it for modern day times, incorporated digital, and added in some AI and machine learning to speed up the process to give marketers answers to those unanswerable questions. Can you track exactly when someone hovers over an ad, shows an interest, and then clicks later on? You can, using math, high level math, essentially.
Masters, we're going to get you right back to the show. I want to talk to you real quick about our Real Estate Listings Club. If you're a real estate agent and you want to master the listing game, you need to look at our club. We have over 130 online lessons that you can do whenever you choose. We also get together 3 times a week, okay? Twice a week, we're on group training, coaching calls where you can get Q&A, you ask questions, you get live training, you do role plays, and then we also have a live call session every week. We have top real estate agents all over the country that are all together, collaborating with each other, supporting each other, holding each other accountable, and taking listings. So check out realestatelistings.club. It's the best investment you will ever make into your real estate business. And then finally, don't forget about our new tool. It's called Ringleader AI. Go to our site, ringleaderai.net, or test drive it for yourself. Call right now, 774-214-2076. Take a test drive and let us know what you think. Guys, all these tools are available on my site, which is davidhill.ai. Again, davidhill.ai. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So essentially, what you're saying, if I'm understanding, is you can still track it, you just don't know who. Like the privacy now, it's like you don't know it's David Hill
Right.
that's seeing. So if I want to be a great at marketing, it sounds like you tell me it's like you're focusing on a specific area for a specific company business, and you're just gonna hit it all, and that's part of the bigger plan. So is that kind of in line with what you're sharing, or?
I'll give it to you another way. Okay. I'll add on to that, which is that when digital first started with this addiction to the click, it sold marketers down the path, because we've had 20 years of this now, thinking that the only way to market is to target, and it's all about the individual. And what we have found after 20 years of research is that's absolutely not the case, and that you actually have to pan the camera back. Because what we've found is, you know, that old adage, you can't see the forest for the trees. You're too close to things at that point. So panning the camera back allows you to have more of a big picture. But with AI, we start with the camera pan back, and now we can zoom into the details. We're not going to zoom in at an individual level, but we can zoom into an individual ad and tell you how well it worked or didn't work compared to the other ones, and tell you how to take your 10 grand a month or so and reallocate it so that you get more sales or more leads from the same amount of marketing spend.
So is this kind of, if you're on like a Google Maps and it shows you there's a Subway right around the corner from you, or Dunkin' Donuts or something, is that similar in line with, or is that something different?
That's something different.
Okay. But isn't that, to me, that's good marketing, right? If I'm in my car and then all of a sudden I see a thing pops up Dunkin' Donuts, and then I see a Dunkin' Donuts right there.
No, that's great
me,
marketing.
that's
That's marketing based upon proximity. It sends out essentially messages to people that are within that proximate area that have opted into certain things. We don't do that, but we can tell you, the marketer, how well that's working for you. Meaning, because listen, here's the thing, you could spend, let's say you spend 10,000 a month on that, and you're like, wow, it's really working, sales are up. But some of those people found out about you. Some of those people were already on their way in to see you, and it popped up, and you wouldn't have needed to give them a discount. It's all
Got it.
about which of those people would have come anyway. Because the truth is, you could spend 10 grand a month and actually be losing money, because half of those people would have come in anyway without a coupon. And that's what you want to be able to figure out. And that's what our software enables marketers to do.
All right, so let's connect the storytelling now to this and the AI component. So talk about the storytelling. Give us an example of the storytelling.
An example of storytelling is what we chatted about before, which is that as a marketer, I have to go out and buy these ads, like those ads that you just talked about, those local ads that pop up that say, hey, my donut shop is right around the corner, essentially. So I have to be able to do that. But then, as in addition to that, I also have to be able to translate that into a language that someone in finance understands and that my CEO understands, and be able to tell a story around that. For example, we spent $10,000 last month in Dayton, Ohio, and we saw a 74% uplift in sales from our localized marketing. And we were able to determine that of that, 50% of that was incremental, meaning that these are sales we wouldn't have gotten anyway. And our ROI on this was 8x what we spent on this, better than any other campaign. So that's a long, kind of involved story that you would tell to a CEO if you happen to be caught with him or her in an elevator. But the reality, what a CEO wants is a single bullet point for a slide. That's it. That's all they want. But then you have to be able to tell that story, that same story, using data for finance. But finance wants to hear a different story. What finance wants to be able to hear is, not only did you see that uplift in sales, not only was it the most efficient in terms of what you did, but based upon the data that we have, if we had an extra $1 million, it would translate to an extra X number of millions of dollars in sales. Because what you want to be able to do is to get that $1 million from them, so you can use that in the campaign to be able to actually execute upon it. So the job of a marketer is to be able to take that data and translate it into multiple different stories for different audiences. That's the key. And that's also, when you think about it from a sales aspect, it's about being able to tell the story to the folks that you're talking to. What are the types of issues? What are the problems that they're running into? When you first start talking to folks, at least our prospects that we deal with, a lot of them are running into issues where they're trying to get something done and they can't prove it. So they want to be able to prove it. Others have platforms in place, but there's limitations for them. So you have to be able to listen to hear what are the problems that they're running into and what are the solutions that you can provide, and then craft a story around that so it delivers for them what they need and what they need to hear in order to make a decision. And that's the same thing for our customers, is that they need to be able to craft a story for finance so they can get finance to make a decision in the room. So at the end of the day, our customers who are marketers are actually salespeople when you think about it, because they have to close finance to get more budget, and they have to close the CEO to get them to believe in their agenda.
Yeah, ironically, and you just answered the question, but my question was going to be, who's your ideal customer? Who would be the perfect customer for you, and why?
Yeah, our perfect customer is a chief marketing officer with the budget 10 million or more in spend per year, who is hearing about all these cool new digital marketing channels like streaming, Netflix ads, Amazon Prime ads, and has tried it and hasn't been able to prove it works, but is seeing that competitors are doing it and is frustrated because they can't get budget because they can't prove it works. That's our ideal customer.
So let's use me as an example. So I own a real estate brokerage with with my wife, and really that's how we fund our life. But I'm a podcast host, but I do training for local business owners using a grant through the state of Massachusetts called the Workforce Training Fund grant. It's grant money. A business owner with less than 100 employees can go apply for the grant. They get approved. I come in, I do a $5,000 workshop for them. It's great. They get training, they get to use the money. I get to make some money on doing what I absolutely love doing, et cetera, et cetera. If I was a client, how would you advise me? I guess maybe I'm being selfish now, trying to get some marketing strategy, but because you would think anybody would do this. It's like such a no-brainer. You would be surprised at how many business owners like, I don't have time for that, or to think it's fake or whatever it is.
You're absolutely right, because the truth is most of the money that people are spending on ads is completely wasted. It's the equivalent of just pouring money out the window when you're driving down Route 1 in Saugus. It's the same thing. There's no difference. Meaning, if you were to stop that spending on half your spend, you would get the same number of leads or sales. That's really the key. In that case, what we're talking about is looking at your ad spend and then running it through our software and seeing what the software says in terms of what's working and what's not working. And for most people, they know what is their cost per lead, cost per sale, that type of thing. In fact, most marketers and most entrepreneurs who are spending money on ads, they probably have a Google sheet that's got every single day of the year, and it's got all the leads that came in, it's how much they spent, and their website visits, and they're calculating cost per click, cost per lead, cost per sale, that type of thing. And what I would say to them is my kind of DIY advice, if you will, to try to do something similar to what we do with our platform, but on a basis of, hey, here's how I can do it myself, is I would go back into those platforms where you got all that click data and all that spend data, and I would add another column right after the date called impressions. Meaning how many ad impressions, because going back to what we talked about earlier, how many eyeballs was I reaching on each day? And then I would create a graph day by day for the last year and pivot it in like a spreadsheet and look at the graph to see how many impressions there were per day. And then I would overlay clicks on top of it. Because what you're going to see is when your impressions are up, clicks don't necessarily go up. They may take, because remember, awareness builds. And it takes time. And you want to understand, what is that time frame? Is it 3 days? Is it 2 days? Is it 2 weeks? Sometimes it's 2 weeks. Sometimes it's a month or more. And then when you find a correlation where you can see that pattern because you've seen it over a couple of different days, then you want to go back to see, what was I doing on those days when impressions were high and it led to those clicks and eventual sales, and do more of that. And instead of looking at clicks, look at those eyeballs, because that's what you're actually buying, are those eyeballs. That's the key with this. So that would be my advice, to say, start with that. Add that extra column to your Google sheet of tracking. Everyone should do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Clearly, I'm not your customer because I don't have a multi-million-dollar budget.
Not yet.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that you said that. What I'm trying to figure out is because I've done the ads, I did the Facebook ads, I ran them for probably 6 months, got a lot of tire kickers. I think that's normal, but I never did more than just that. Like, I never added the running some ads in YouTube and targeting an area as well, and doing some other things outside of just social media. So would you recommend that somebody does it all, or I could literally have a billboard on the side of 290 if I want to? I personally don't know how I could measure that, besides it's part of the bigger picture, right?
What I always suggest for small business owners is to start with one channel. And it sounds like you already had success. And what I would say to you is, how long ago was that you ran that 6 months worth of Facebook?
I haven't ran this phase, probably last fall we ran ads and I got a bunch of registrations.
Okay.
And clearly my story wasn't correct, because a lot of people were like, oh no, I'm looking for grant money for my business for something. They weren't 100% clear what they were even registering for. That's my fault, clarity. But yeah, so it's been last fall, I think, was when we ran ads consistently.
Right. So what it sounds like is that your ads actually got some interest, but
They
maybe the
did.
messaging was slightly off, possibly. So what I would suggest is go back to that. It worked. Your audience is there, obviously. You know how to target and use it. I would say refine the message, make sure your landing page clearly spells out the offer. And my gut tells me as well that your pitch is you've probably given it 100 times since then, easily. So your
Yeah.
messaging is probably more right on than it was even a year ago. And that's going to help refine the ad and the message. But what I would do is that I would definitely go back to that. I wouldn't run a billboard, because you only need to start moving into multiple channels when you start to max out a channel. So, let's say you start running Meta and it starts working for you and you start spending more and you're up to 30 grand a month and you're like, all right, this is killing it. How can I get more? How can I double down? And it's okay. Now we need to go someplace else. That's when things start to get complicated from a math perspective. But the nice thing is that if you stick with one channel, all your information is right there. There's no confusion.
So it's funny because I feel like when I started running ads with this company, they didn't, like I said in the beginning, their answer to everything was we got to spend more money, but they were never showing me like what you're talking about now. No, David, look at this. Look, this is what's happening. Then I would have felt, because I was paying them $4,500 a month. I know it's not a ton of money, but it's a good investment into trying to make this thing work, and it never worked. At the end of the day, I threw away about 25,000 before I said I can't do this anymore. But their answer was always, "We got to increase the budget. We got to increase the budget," and I feel like that's so common. And
I agree with you that agencies will say that, but the truth is that if you're not spending any money and you just go out because think about it, if you're not spending any money, you have a small number of visitors to your website. The number of eyeballs that you're exposing to your business is very small. If all of a sudden you go out and you start spending $5,000 a month and now you've targeted, like within Massachusetts, specific for your business owners and stuff like that, and all of a sudden over the course of a month, you have 100,000 business owners in Massachusetts now aware of you. And let's say that cost you $10,000 a month. I would argue you don't need to spend more money. You just need more time for that awareness to build. And it sounded like it worked. You got some tire kickers. It's just the messaging was off. And that's common the first time you run ads, but it sounded like it worked. I would encourage you to go back and do it, David.
I think that's going to be my takeaway from today's call. I think you're actually right.
There you go.
And now I just got to hire someone to do it. I don't want to deal with trying to set up Facebook ads again. All right. Before we wrap, how do you mentioned AI? Tell us, how does somebody incorporate AI into this?
We've got AI incorporated into our platform. When we first built it out, it was a 4-part process, meaning math would do one thing, a human had to look at it, make a decision, and then go on to the next step. And there was a series of steps that humans had to evaluate. We built our own AI internally to do that IA, if you will, the intelligent automation aspect of it, so that humans don't have to get involved at all. So that decisioning is done by the AI inside. But we have a lot of clients that will take the data, upload it to one of the large language models like a ChatGPT, and then have a conversation with ChatGPT about the data for the insights, if you will, to help with that storytelling, to extract what's the most important thing about this week's data set, essentially.
Interesting. So you can export the data from like a Meta or something and load it into the AI and
our data comes in dashboards, but it's also available as like a big CSV file or Excel file export, which can easily be uploaded to like a ChatGPT, who can absorb it very quickly. And then you can say, okay, give me some insights in terms of what's happening this week, type of thing, which is pretty cool.
No, it's fantastic. And it's funny because I do all that for my real estate company.
Yeah.
I don't do it for the training, and which is, this is good, which is what I absolutely love doing. All right, cool, man. I appreciate you. Are you still a magician? Tell us a little bit about how does the magic help in this whole process for you? You still using it?
Magic is still an important part of my life. The way I see it is that, for some people, magic is relaxing. They like it. They see it as like a stress reduction thing for them. Some people I know get pissed off when they see magic and it stresses them out. But for most people, they're amazed, and it chills them out, which is great. And I feel like that our platform for marketers who are stressed by the numbers and the math, and they're overwhelmed, since our platform handles all that math for them, it does the same thing. It's kind of stress relief. So there's magic in terms of how we do it, but it serves the same purpose, which is, thank goodness it chills them out, which is good, because marketers, they have a very stressful job. They really do. And we make it easier for them.
Okay, why would magic piss someone off anyway? I don't understand that.
Because some people get frustrated. They would see how something's done. They would see something happen and they want to figure it out.
Got it.
And they will grab a deck of cards and try to figure out a secret. And when they can't figure it out, they get angry because it doesn't agree with their view of the world. For me, the whole concept behind magic is to teach us that it's like a car accident. And you're on one corner and the cop comes over and says, "Hey, did you see what happened?" And you explain what happened. The cop walks across the street to the other corner and asks them, and they tell a completely different story. So magic is supposed to teach us, from my perspective, that there's always a different viewpoint. You can always look at things from different angles, but some people, they like to be one-sided. They like to believe that they can figure things out. And hey, some people, they're just not ready to walk across the street and look at a situation from a different perspective.
Yeah, so true. So my final question for you is, and again, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm not sure my audience, there might be a few people that have multi-million-dollar budgets. I think we're primarily salespeople and all entrepreneurs and small business owners. So what advice would you give to our audience and again, everybody learned what you shared today was great. And we're all going to learn a ton from it and use it. But what is the specific thing you would tell the entrepreneur right now that's out there competing to get attention?
What I would say is that you need to understand that when you're living in this digital world, especially from a marketing perspective, and you have a website and you're focused on SEO, maybe you're doing some paid advertising and things are working for you, that the big companies where people find out about you, like a Google or a Meta or an Amazon, these are publicly traded companies. And what I mean by that is that they have these quarterly pressures. So they're always changing and always tweaking their systems, always to benefit them. And so if you have something that you're doing that's helping your business and it's working great, congratulations, that's awesome. If you are in month 6 and it is still working, I'm here to tell you, you are on borrowed time. And so my big takeaway for everyone is, you have to operate your business. You have to do what works today, but you have to understand that you always have to be looking forward. And I'm not here to tell you what's the next big secret, because there's always something new and big that's coming, but it's your job as a business owner to also have a foot forward in the future and be a little negative and understand that, hey, what's working today could stop working literally overnight. And so be paranoid. That would be my takeaway, is be paranoid, as most small business owners are, but always try and test new things to come up with something that can work and be the next big thing for you. That would be my takeaway.
I love it. Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, how do people get in touch with you, Jeff?
They can find me on LinkedIn, or they can go to Provalytics.com. Also, you can go to Get Prova. That's GETPROVA. Prova actually means proof in Italian. So getprova.com.
All right, my man. I appreciate you investing the time with us today. I'm going to go connect with you right now on LinkedIn. Any final thoughts you want to just tell our audience before we wrap today? I'll give you the last word.
I would just say, if anything we said piqued an interest and you're interested in how advertising and marketing has shifted, we actually have a free course on our website. You can go and check it out at getprova.com. You'll read through the past, the present, and the future of digital advertising. There's actually a test afterwards. And then afterwards, you pass it, you get a certificate to put on LinkedIn, and you'll be attribution certified. No cost for it. Great foundational knowledge in terms of understanding. Maybe we'll also help folks look to see where the future's headed as well, too.
Awesome. And I'll drop that link down below in the show notes. Jeff, we appreciate you being here today. Thank you, man. And look forward to connecting again in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you, David.
Thanks for tuning in to the Persistent Entrepreneur Podcast. Remember, I exist to persist, and so do you. Now make sure to check out our tools at davidhill.ai. And for you real estate agents, don't miss the 7-day opportunity to join our community and get full access to our training, coaching, and events. Let's connect on social media, and a big shout out to our sponsor, Vulcan 7, your go-to for the best real estate listing seller data. Visit vulcan7.com/path to mastery for a special offer for our listeners. And guys, don't forget, subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and share your feedback. Let us know if there's a guest you'd like to hear from or what topics you want us to explore. Appreciate you, entrepreneurs. Let's keep going one day, one show at a time. You rock.